So yeah, over the next 5 days, we'll give you guys a bit of an introduction into C++. And by the end of this course, hopefully you'll have learned how to code some very simple things in C++. Maybe like find the factorial of a number, find the number of primes that are less than a number, and other simple tasks. So I guess without further ado, let's get started with our first class where I'll be doing an introduction to some basic C++ and some variables. So first of all, why should we learn C++? Well, for me, I find C++ is a really powerful language, and often it's faster than other languages like maybe Java or Python you've learned. C++ is fast to the point that like the exact same program in C++ is, if you know lots of C++, I'm sorry, I'm not sure the class is for you then. This is kind of a basic overview. Python is not going to be taught in this course, unfortunately. How to download C++? We will give you, we will teach you how to use Replit. So yeah, you can use Replit if you want. We're not going to need to download anything for this course. If you already have Replit, that is amazing. Okay. cvp.sh works. Very funny. So C++, as I said, it's a really fast language. It's powerful. I am a competitive programmer, so I do USICO and this stuff, if any of you know USICO. And by far, it's the most common language, and almost all the top coders use C++. And also, C++ is used to code a lot of games, like Nintendo games, for example, like Mario games or whatever, Sonic games, whatever. And even Genshin Impact for the Genshin fans out there. All right. Now, without further ado, let's get to our first program. For some students, there are some more advanced students in here, but this class is kind of for beginners. So I'll first switch the screen share into, and I'm going to get into Replit. Does Python work in C++? I'm not sure how that makes sense. But it's commonly like kind of a ritual if you're getting started with a language to first write a hello world code, basically a code that will just print out hello world. And please don't annotate, that's not really cool. Yeah, so if you already have a Replit, you can go make another project. If you don't have Replit, I'll paste this link into the chat for everyone. And just go to this link. So tell me when everybody has a C++ file open. Okay, if you have opened it, that's good. Do we sign up? You can sign up if you want, but it totally works without signing up, so yeah. Let's give everyone like 30 more seconds to get everything set up. All right, then let's get started with the first program. So for the first program, I'm actually just going to ask you to copy what I'm going to write. It may seem I am typing a lot of weird things that you might not understand at first. So what? But it will make sense. I will explain some of the stuff later. So everyone, please copy this code. Actually, some people prefer to keep this curly bracket on the top line. Personally, I do it bottom, but either way, it's fine. And then press run. And congratulations, you have said hello world. let's see. Everyone, please copy the code and say hello world to the world of coding. I'll send the link in the chat to Replit for those of you who don't have the link yet. And tell me when you have finished coding this.
Ooh.
Can we use the STD thing at the top to get rid of the STD? If you're talking about using namespace STD, yes. Namespaces are complicated, and frankly, I'm not too familiar with them myself. But yeah, okay. For the person who coded, person who did the other stuff, okay, very cool. I guess if you want to use using namespace STD, you can do this and then remove the STD. And it still works. Yeah, as I've said, namespaces are pretty complicated, so, and they're definitely outside the scope of this class, but if you use using namespace STD, you can save a lot of STD : stuff. All right, has everyone typed in the program and ran it? I see a yes. No. For the people who haven't, I'll give another minute. For you, it says error. Oh, okay. Can you send your code to me? That's the link, I think. No, like copy paste the code into the chat. Okay. If you're doing this, you need to include this line. Also, this is an end L, not end one. L and one look very similar, but this is end L. Yours, let's see. Is there anyone else with an error? For those of you who have an error, can you like send your code? Is using namespace STD kind of like import some library in Python? Actually, I'd say import library in Python is more like include, and then using namespace STD just allows you not to do it. Yeah, it's end L instead of N1. For those of you who are feeling a little fancy, you can use the end line character, and this will also make a new line. Oh, wow. Is it like java.util in Java? Kind of. Yeah, it seems like a lot of you are kind of familiar with this stuff, so I'm not going to spend way too much time on this stuff. All right. Now everyone has the program, so I will go back and kind of explain what everything in the code meant. That is not supposed to be there for now. Let's see. So basic program features. So first of all, the first line in our code, if you remember, was our include. So if we include hashtag include at the top, we can use a file that is within C++. So whoever is unmuted, please unmute. So like IOStream in this case, oops, this is a typo. You need to surround the include with square brackets. You need to include the file name in square brackets. And then this will allow you to basically use cin and cout, which are two things that will help you to perform input and output. How do you comment in C++? That is later. How do you turn on dark mode? I don't know off the top of my head. You can configure that in your own time. And then in our class 4, you'll be introduced to another include file, which is going to be vector. Are you going to make games? No, games are a bit advanced and take a bit of time to code. So yeah. You might have also noticed the semicolon at the end of our end out line. Like, I'll just quickly type the file back. So you may have noticed this semicolon. This semicolon basically indicates that that is the end of a line. So when the C++ compiler goes through this, or basically when the computer reads this line, it'll know, okay, you have a semicolon, time to stop the line, move this to the next line. Is this anything like Java? Actually, C++ and Java, for the very basics, are very similar. So if statements, for loops, while loops, actually exact same syntax in C++ and Java. So every language I know has semicolon. Well, yeah, Python doesn't. C++ is also what's called an object-oriented programming language, kind of like Java, but we won't go into detail about that. Does cin work like a scanner in Java? Yes, I'd say they're pretty similar. So I'll move into cin cout a bit later. And then finally, you have noticed the main function. You define it as int main, and then you put a set of parentheses. Main is a function, and we'll go into functions a bit more on day 3. But for now, you should know that this is your main function. Type is int. You just type int main, and then you surround your code in curly brackets. Alternatively, you can have the line return 0. This is actually more common, but if you don't include it, it is okay as well. Functions and variables are kind of similar, I think. Depends on what similar means. They are similar in some ways and very different in others. Yeah, the returns are at the end is optional. Let's move on. So comments. So I had people asking about comments earlier. So how to comment in C++ is you put 2 slashes in front of the line. So when you put 2 slashes in front of the line, suddenly the compiler will know that this is a comment, and it will basically skip over the line. So why people use comments? It's for documentation and kind of explaining how your code goes. So for the remainder of today, and hopefully the other instructors do this, but you will put double slash in front of a line to comment. There's also the comment for a lot of other languages like JavaScript, very good. And also just plain Java is also double slash. So if you know Java, then you actually have a pretty good grasp of the basics in C++ already. And you can also have also have comments which are multiple lines, multi-line comments. To do that, you do slash, you press slash and a star to start it, and you press star and a slash to end. So yeah, also comments have been grayed out by the IDE. Replit grays out comments, so it's easier to determine whether a code is a comment. And yeah, comment notation is shared across many languages. So yeah, and as you can see with my sample code on the left, I have two scout statements, but because this second one is commented, it won't print the statement out. And in fact, the only statement that gets printed out is the hello. So yeah, CSS or JS are /star as well. Yeah, very good. Statements. So statements are basically, you tell the computer to do something and the computer does something. So statements are, we will delve into way more deeply tomorrow with if, and we'll go more deeply with if statements, for and while loops. I will also go over variable related statements in a bit. So variables are important source stuff. And basically right now we'll just be dealing with input output, then variables. Tomorrow will be more complex statements. So let's go over a few variable types. So variables are used to store things, as some of you might know, and they come in many different types. So right now we'll just be going to the basic types. Some more advanced types like arrays, like vectors, will be introduced in class 4. So yeah, can someone, all right, everyone, let's see how many variable types you have found in the program so far. And the code on the right might look a bit complicated, but really it's just a bunch of variable definitions. So let's try to find the different variable types. One person really already found them. It's pretty obvious given how the types have a different color than other pieces of code. Number is not quite a variable type. But it looks like a majority of you are getting the correct answers. A is not a variable type, that is a variable name. So I'll just go over the answers right now. The 3 types of variables are ints, floats, and strings that are in here. There are also other types that are kind of like extended versions of these, but they function mostly the same way. So for ints, there's lowercase int, you have floats, and you also have strings. So these are some of the basic variable types. Int can store integer values. Floats store decimals. Bool, I completely forgot. That is a good point. Return is not a variable type. Return is a command. Do you have a question?
Boolean is the true or false thing.
Yeah, I know. I totally forgot to include bool in here. So I guess I'll compensate by doing it here. So you can have bool b equals true. You can also have b equals false. You can have, there are also some other like logical operators, like logical and logical or. If we have time, then I can certainly delve into these today. But for now, know that bools are just the really basic data types. They can store true or false. And actually, what true and false actually are just 0 and 1. So if you do this, then really, and this does the same thing as if we had true and false. Actually, if you print a bool and it's true, it'll just print out something that hasn't been printed out yet, 1. And if it's false, it'll just print out. Why is it taking so long to run? It prints out 0. So yeah. Booleans are very cool, despite how basic they are. So let's go over defining a variable. So as you can see on this slide, I've defined many variables and I've given them names, I've given them values. This sample code kind of shows a lot of things I'm going to cover. So I'll just cover them initially. So defining a variable. So when you define a variable, you kind of have two ways to do it. You can either choose to initialize it or you don't initialize it. So without initialization, you just use your data type, which here I'll call int, my variable name, which I will call my variable, and then I'll just end the line with a semicolon. And now I have an int type variable called my variable. And there's not really much I can do with this variable right now. It's just there. Actually, if these are local variables, they'll have random values. So they're kind of unpredictable. And for the people who are for the people here who are new to C++ or maybe know Python, C++ is very strict about the variables. So in Python, you can do something like x equals 5 and then later say x equals 6.1 and then finally x equals false. But in C++, once you define a variable, the variable data type sticks with it for the rest of its life. So throughout the program, if I have an int, my variable, it has to stay an int. And I'll demonstrate an example. Well, since I have b here, I can just use it. If I have b equals false, and then I assign b equal to the word false, it's running. I'm not sure. Wait, okay, this is weird. Let's see. Okay, now this should show it. I'm not sure what was happening in the last one, but as you see on the right, your C++ compiler is throwing an error. It says you can't assign an int from type const char array, which actually just is string. Char array is like C. You can technically change the value of the same data type. Yeah, so if I have b equals a and I want to print out b, and then suddenly I want, okay, now b equals 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then I want to see out b, then I can change the value of b within the same data type, but I just can't switch to like a float or something, I think. Okay, somehow it was also there. Is there a break? Because it's 1 hour, there won't be a break. Kind of like Java, yeah, kind of like Java. C++ and Java are very interrelated. You can also choose to initialize a variable, which I've done over here. So once I have the variable b, then I have already given it the value 8. Actually, if I don't give it a value, as I mentioned before, this value actually is a random number. So it'll say the same, but like if I also do another value like this, it print out another different number. So yeah, that's just a bit of a tangent point. Onto my main point about variables. So like if you wanted an integer and a string, you'll have to do another string, and then you can use the other variable as the string. So C++ variables are very strict. You can't change the data type. Can you use a variable in a variable? I don't know what you mean by that. How do you make a function a variable? You can't make a function a variable. All right, since I have so many people asking me about functions, I'll go into functions a bit. Functions are actually kind of defined the same way as variables, except you have to pass a few arguments into it. So like, and you can also make them void. You can't have like void variable, but you can have a void type return function. All of this will be elaborated in lesson 3 for those of you who aren't quite following on right now. Cn is not, well, Cn kind of is a variable. It's like a complex variable called a class, which I'm not going to get into today. But back with functions and variables, like if I have a function, I also need to pass parameters and I need to write code into the angle brackets. So that is kind of the difference between defining variables and functions. How do cin a variable? I'm sorry, your autocorrect is kind of messing up my interpretation. We can save that question for a bit later. You should initialize local variables, which are these, and now move into global variables. So I said all your code should go into the main function, but actually you can also have some variables outside, like you can define variables that can be used here. What does it mean that C++ is an object or defined language, object-oriented programming? Yeah, object-oriented, it's an OOP language. Basically, it's centered around classes and structs. We will not go into that. That is pretty beyond the scope of the class. So we can have global variables, and actually global variables have already been initialized. So global ints are initialized to be the value 0. And you'll see that if I have another variable, another variable, it still prints out 0. So that means all of the global variables will print out 0, as is shown here. How to print a string in C++ like this. You can print your basic data types by using cout and then two less than symbols and then your variable name. And then just kind of in this format is the really basic way to do it. Okay, I've been on quite a bit tangent. Let's focus on int now. So int, keyword int, is there a Kahoot? There really isn't much to Kahoot about. Well, I guess we could do a Kahoot, but I feel it's a bit more productive if we gave you maybe a problem to do in the remaining minutes of class. So integers defined by keyword int, they can store positive and negative integer values. And the most important thing about ints, I guess, maybe one of the most complex things, is that ints aren't infinite. So there's a limit to what they can store. For the case of an int, you can store up to maybe -2 billion to 2 billions. But if we store larger numbers with an int, then as you can show here, this third line created a random variable. Well, it's not really random. There's a method to the madness, but yeah. How do you make cin a variable? Cin already is a variable. You just need to call it. It's a lot of complex OOP stuff now, but just for now, just know that you can use cin to input some stuff. Is it like a special number? I'm not quite sure what you mean by special number. How to do the string again? We will cover that in a few slides. So how the heck do we store 10 to the 12 or 1 quadrillion? Well, there's this other data type. It's called a long that can just store larger numbers. And in the case of longs, they can store for like about 1 billion times more numbers than the int, which is kind of freaky to think about. But yeah, longs can easily store like numbers like 97.6543210, even though ints can't store this number. Yeah, just if you want to store really large numbers, use long. Otherwise, their functionality is exactly the same as ints. In Python, if you use many operations, the answer is not very exact. Is C++ the same? I haven't tested that. I think if you use many operations, I think computers at the very core, they're the same, right? So I would suppose if you use many operations in Python, then if you use many operations in C++, then I guess eventually you might have it become a little less accurate, but I'm not sure. This should only happen with stuff like floats and doubles, which we will get into. Speaking of floats and doubles, they're basically just decimals. There's nothing much different about them from int, except that they just have more, can store decimal places. Double can store more decimal places than floats, which is why a lot of the time I'll just be using a double and not float, because doubles are more precise, right? Is it possible to create a script that writes simple C++ using C++? You'll have to hard code the program, but yeah. How are long longs different than ints and doubles from floats? They just have more memory. So int, you may have heard, has 32 bits. Long is 64-bit. And doubles are kind of the same. Floats have like maybe 20 to 30 points after the decimal place, and doubles have like 50-ish. So basically long longs are exactly the same as ints and doubles the same as floats, besides the fact that they can store more stuff basically. Yeah, no problem. Will you send us your slideshow? We will send a recording, but I'm not sure we will send the slideshow. And strings. So strings, basically, they just represent a sequence of characters. And to go into a bit more detail about strings, let's do a practice problem. I will use namespace std because I want my code to be a bit simpler. So our task right now is to ask the user for a name, and then we will greet the user. And I recommend everyone follow along in their own Replit. So yeah, everyone please get back onto Replit. All right, we want to ask the user for their name, but how are we going to ask them for their name? We'll have to store their name somewhere somehow. So how do you guys propose we store the user's name? What variable type would we use? All correct answers. Let's use a string. So now we have their name. And now let's print out something that will kind of like introduce them to the program. Let's ask for their name. And as I'm typing along, please copy down. If you already know, you can work ahead. All right. Now, if I run this code, vector, you're way too advanced. You're 3 steps ahead. For now, a basic string will work because, okay, I'll go into a bit about vectors. I'm not quite sure how to use a vector unless you use like a vector of characters, but that's just really inefficient. String is the best way to store like some pieces of text, like a name. Hash map, there's no way you need a hash map. Calm down, friend. Also, if you know hash map, this class is not for you. Well, yeah, we've asked them for their name. Now let's input their name. And for that, we're going to use cin. Now you'll notice 2 things about cout versus cin. So first, Houtz's angle brackets are oriented differently than cin. So like cout, you're kind of like pushing it out, right? That's how I like to think about it. You're pushing the code out to the right. And in cin, you're kind of extracting a variable into your code. So that's why it faces left. So like, I just think cout, push this code out, cin, drag this in. And you'll also notice that you don't need an endl. So that kind of makes sense if you think about it. Like, you don't need to end a line if like you're inputting something, because actually how we're doing it is if the program asks me for my name, this will completely stop until I give them a name. And then like I will type my name, but when I type my name, my computer doesn't exactly know when to recognize it's my name. For all it knows, my name could be A, it could be AN, it could be AND, or it just could be Andrew. So right now, it doesn't really know. So we have to press enter, and then we know the name. So to verify that we have the name, let's print the name back out. All right, hello, what is your name? Hi, I'm Andrew. And it printed my name back out. So basically that's the gist of how to extract a name. And one final piece of final piece that you don't really have yet for completing this is to use string literals. Like this text, we call it a string literal. But now we want to print out like, hello, Andrew, how are you doing today? But we have, this is currently within the, this Andrew text is currently stored within the variable. So we'll need to be able to extract, we'll need to print out the variable and everything else. Let's see. So yeah, how we're going to tackle this is, well, let's get the first part. Let's type in everything we need before we have our name, right? So now I'll end this. And then let's also type the remaining parts in. So now we have this, and we see a red line, which means that clearly we made an error somewhere. So how we're going to deal with this is that every time you alternate between string literals and names, you use the 2 angle brackets again. So once you do this, you'll be able to say, oh, hello, what is your name? I'm going to print it back. Now it's going to say, hello, Andrew, how are you doing today? So by this, we can tell that we've successfully been able to print out the name in context of a string. So does everyone have this code? If you have an error, please send me your code. Oh, let's see. Let's see. Remember to include IOStream and use namespace std. For some of you, that might be the reason why your code is not working. Let's see. Also, be very careful of coding. If you accidentally make a typo, like if I say, oops, I added an extra I, we won't recognize it. And it's also important to notice that capitalization matters. And this is where C++ is kind of different from Java, the string. In Java, string is capitalized, but in C++ it isn't. So Java users, be careful of this. Let's see. Okay.
Sir, you are in a car. Are you driving?
Whoever is unmuted, please mute. Let's actually see this code. is something wrong with it? Well, yeah, you need the end out here. Is there anything else? Oh yeah, this comma is stray. So this comma needs to be within the quotation marks. You got it? I'm going to avoid calling people out by name because we are recording, so I will not address you directly by name. Is everyone able to print out their name and address themselves? I don't know what that was. Does everyone have this code? I see, yes. Let's wait another minute for everyone to get everything in. Is there concatenation in C++? Yes, but not like in Java. So I guess you can have how to concatenate strings in C++ is, let's take this for an example. I have this, I definitely need to remove this. Basically, like concatenate string is just you add them. Like if like adding two numbers, you add strings. So like hello plus name plus hello plus name, how are you doing today? And when I see out text, it does the same thing. Yes, that's funny. Please, let's see. Oh, yeah, here this works. Let me see everyone else's code. All right, the main function must have name main, so don't change it to anything else. It has to be main. All executable functions need to, all executable files need to have main function. Let's see. All right. You can only have one function, not quite. You can only have one main function, and it has to be this. I can add other functions, but I have to, if I want to execute the file, I have to tell the compiler, hey, start from this function. And to do that, I use int main. And the rest you have to call it somehow, but compiler automatically calls main. Yes. All right. If you add a space, it's supposed to only show the first word you said. If you add a space, it's supposed to only show the first word. I'm not quite sure what you're saying. I guess I'm not sure. Let's see. All right. I guess with the string practice out of the way, let's see. I should also say something about like variable names, which I don't have on the slides, but I'll say something right now. So variable names should start with a character, and it shouldn't include any spaces. So like if I have a variable with a space in between its name, all of a sudden it has no clue. Compiler doesn't know what to do. You can use underscores. That is one of the common ways to have multiple words. Like you'll see me use another underscore variable I can also have another capital variable. This is called camel case. I think I use this in Java. Not sure about any other languages, but you also can't have numbers in the front. But so like if I say 8 stuff, this doesn't work. But I can put numbers anywhere else in the middle. If you say something and then add a space and anything else. Well, you can have, I'm not quite sure what you're trying to say though. I once you telling me that you should only get the first. Oh, I think it's dependent on when you press the input. I'm actually not the most sure. Let's do a quick test. But I'm relatively sure that everything up until enter works. So if I have, oh, I'm wrong. Okay. Apparently it only puts the first word, so yeah, okay. In that case, you have to input the first word. I'm more familiar with this in a competitive programming context where they already have a file. So if you like input like an entire file, then the entire line gets inputted. So that not quite what we want. But yeah, that's a very good point. Thank you for bringing that up. But with variable naming out of the way, also you should know that you cannot use some special words like you cannot define with words, special keywords like while, you cannot define a war. Clearly you can't have, well, wait, can you actually do this? I'm not sure. I don't know why you're able to do this. This seems illegal. But still keywords like do, new, among others, do not use keywords. You'll know if it's a keyword if it starts going another color. And let's see. Can you use variable? It's not like in, I think, it's not like in JavaScript where you have var or variable. Those are not variable types. Let's see. This code. This code should work? Question mark? Yeah, I feel like this code should work. Yeah. So that code works. All right. We have 9 minutes left. Let's move on to our recap problem. So our recap problem, let's have the user input scores for their English, math, and science finals. And after that, we will calculate the user's average score. So I will implement part of it. Another part of it, I'll leave to you. So copy this code first, and then try to see how you will be able to implement finding the average of these 3 numbers. I'll give everyone 2 minutes to start thinking, and then I will start to go over how to code this mini problem. Is 10-minute break coming soon? We are only 1 hour, so class is over in 7 minutes. Will you put the slides on the website? I'm not sure we'll put the slides on the website though. We will send videos. We'll send the recordings over though. No problem. Another minute of your own time thinking. As I've said, no links, but we will send the recording. How to take inputs again? Okay, I'll go over that in just a bit. So, all right, we are asked to our first task is to implement these three scores. You should have used the int variable because, well, we're going to only be dealing with integer scores for now. So first, let's print a nice message for your user because your user probably likes nice messages. So say something like, please input your English score. And then can someone tell me how I would probably input the English score? Use Cien, but how? What do I do now? Cien English score, correct. And then for the science and math scores, we will do the exact same thing. And okay, now how would I compute the average? Average score equals. And also note I can use the previous variables in my definition. Add them and divide by 3. That is how that's how you normally do it, but how would you add them? I know this sounds like a bit of an obvious statement. Can someone type out what I would write inside these parentheses? English score plus science score plus math score. And yeah, I like to put spaces everywhere, so yeah. And finally, we just print our final score. How do we do that? We have Cien, but we should have like a nice message, right? Average score is, but what do I do now? Plus, well, theoretically, I can do it here. Theoretically, I think we can do it here, but that is a bit of an awkward one. I see someone who is very close to the answer. I'll need to do this and put average score, but what do I do now? Okay. I have one correct answer. That is not the correct answer. This code is correct, except I would refrain from naming stuff A, B, and C. I guess if you really know what you're doing, you can say, okay, this is A, B, C. I trust myself to know what my what these variables mean. But for now, let's keep it simple. And you'll also notice that actually this is not the most accurate because, well, let's give it a try right now. I have not completed this. Yes, I have getting more and more correct answers. Right. Yeah, everyone is sending me pretty much the correct answer. So, but we will see that this maybe isn't the most accurate. All right, let's say I have a student who has 97 in English, 97 in science, and 98 in math. Okay. Clearly 97 plus 97 plus 98 divided by 3 is not 97. So clearly something must be up. I already have one person who has the idea. The other correct solution did have the correct idea as well. So integer division, when you have integer division, your result will become an int. It is not quite the fact that they rounded, but it's that it truncated the remaining decimal digits. So our actual value is probably like 97.3333333. This 333 got chunked off by the integer division. And I'll also show another common error that someone has pointed out. Let's put this as a double and see how it goes. Run, please. 97, 97, and 98. Putting this as a double actually didn't help anything. So you can do this. You have to set everything to double. I guess I have no idea what flout is. You set everything to double. You can do that. You can set every one of these to double. You actually only need to set one of these to double, which is what the previous student did correctly. Or another trick you can do is to make this 3 a double. So this is actually my preferred methods. So we have an integer, we have a double. If we divide an integer by a double, we will be able to get a double value. And this value should, once we run this code now, we should get 97.33333. So yeah, that is this problem. Does anyone have any questions? And is everyone able to get the desired output? If you're unable to get the desired output, please send your code over. Can you save the code if you don't have an account? No. So if you want to save your code, you should get an account. But the annoying thing is you can only have one file per project. So that means you have to have a lot of projects. Class is theoretically over. If you want to leave, you are fine. If you can leave. Yeah. Can you send your code in the chat? My code is up here. Let's see. To fix it, you need to have this to be a double and for this. So like if I still do int here, it's not going to work because I don't care if this value is a double, we're giving it an int value. So this value is still going to turn out to be an int. So we have to let this be a double. We have to assign a double value to a double variable. So once we do all of this, we can print out a decimal version. Yeah. Good. Let's see this one. This one should work. I like my code more spaced out. This does not work. The thing is your code right here. It's really messy. Please please put everything on a different line. Like int main. Unless it's like Zoom not allowing you to put things on different lines. Please assign square minutes. Oh, yeah, you'll need to do this. Yeah, back to the correct code here. Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah, it's Zoom. Okay. Can we leave? It's 11. Yes. If nobody has any more questions, I will actually end the meeting now. All right. Thank you for sticking, everyone. Yeah. All right. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks so much.
Bye.
Bye.